Okay, it's been an interesting start to the season for Galway in both codes. Really, new managers. Padraic Joyce is in; he's flying it with the footballers after taking over from Kevin Walsh, and Shane O'Neill is in. Probably a couple of up and down performances, trying to re-energise this Galway team. He's tried a couple of different things. I'm joined by David Connors of the Tuam Herald. David, how you doing?
Shane, how things? How's it going?
Not too bad. Let's jump straight into it with regard to Shane O'Neill. A couple of good performances, beating Cork after going behind, albeit Cork went down to 14 men. And then, of course, there was that game against Limerick, which was very, very comprehensive. Joe Canning went off with 25 minutes to go, but maybe even the signs were there, and Limerick very much bossed the game. So, what's your overall impression of Shane O'Neill so far?
Even at this point, Shane, I think even win or lose against Tip at the weekend, I'd be fairly happy with how things are playing out. We've seen a lot of young players being introduced, a lot of players that we haven't seen before. Your TJ Brennan's, your Ian Murphy's, Fintan Burke, Shane Cooney. I suppose under O'Neill, we're seeing a new game plan, a new style of play as well, which is something different from the more direct style that Micheál Donoghue implemented. I suppose the Limerick game was disappointing, but since then they've kind of bounced back well. Waterford game, they could have won it. I think they hit 18 wides in the end, and feeling that they were a bit unlucky maybe not to get something from it. Then against Cork at the weekend, they only held a 3 point lead at half time after shooting 11 wides, and it looked like the game was probably going to go on the way of Cork, but I suppose a fortunate enough red card, maybe, or well, not a fortunate enough, but Galway were fortunate probably that an incident like that occurred, and they took control from there on, and they held Cork to 2 points from two Patrick Horgan frees, and from there, then I've been very happy. I think it's 31 players he's introduced so far across the league, and signs have been good, and we kind of see a style of play that we haven't seen before. A lot of short passing, something different. Hard to be too despondent with things so far. And even if Tip will be another test, another level, I think this weekend. But provided they don't come out with a bit of a hammer, or there's still a lot to take from the league so far.
Do you think people in general had kind of felt that Micheál Donoghue had obviously bridged the gap, ended the famine, that type of thing, but that Galway hadn't developed a style or a system since then, that it was pretty much predictable, long ball after long ball, and teams to some degree could saw it was coming and could set up to sort of battle that?
Absolutely. It became very kind of one-dimensional, really, didn't it? If your Johnny Glynn wasn't winning the ball, or your Joseph Cooney, you're straight away they were in a bit of bother. It was short, like even against Limerick in the All Ireland final, where they offered the short puck out to Toohey, and he struggled coming out with it. And like, I don't know, I think Donoghue done a fantastic job with Galway, but maybe it was time for a change. Like he his style of play really got a lot of teams nearly had it figured out, and I feel like that result against Dublin last year. There was an Indian summer kind of against Kilkenny, but I feel that game against Dublin was kind of coming all year, and I had said it to a few people, but it's nice to see something different, and maybe even just a break and fresh faces. I know a lot of the players have said as well from chatting to them, even Porrick men, a break is or a change as good as any break. Like, so they're happy enough with things so far and all that anyway. So.
And what's Shane O'Neill been like to deal with? I mean, I've probably spoken about it a few times that when we were involved with Kula against Nipirshig in the All Ireland run, he was their manager. I was very impressed with how he set up his team. I thought this is a modern manager, and when he was announced as Galway boss, I thought that's actually a really good sign for Galway.
Yeah, that's for sure. And part of the basis he got the job was kind of the professionalism he brought to things. From chatting to a few people who conducted the interviews and were there, they seem to think that that's what bitted him. And he got great feedback from ex-players and people that have worked with him, and amongst other things. And even just from dealing with it from a media point of view, he seems very courteous and willing to give up his time. And he's never really rude or anything like that. I know the general public mightn't care too much about us, but I find good. And like all feedback so far has been pretty positive towards him.
Can you just explain how this Galway team are setting up compared with like some of the notable changes that I saw at the weekend were with Porrick Mannion out midfield, his brother Cahill from the forward line, and I know he's been tried at midfield before. He was there. Fintan Burke was in wing back. Road McInerney were seen at full back rather than the half back line. So there are plenty of changes. Can you sort of outline what way you think he's setting up this team?
Cork was probably the most telling game, really. Kind of, it's to describe maybe this triple triangle, kind of what I happened to see. Like, so, your full back line, say McInerney, and Morrissey are kind of a deep lying two, and they kind of picked up the 2-man inside line. So you have Sean Loftus there then, who is kind of more of a ball player than an actual out-and-out defender, and he's an outlet for the puck-outs. He'd probably be number one option for Éanna Murphy or James Cahill if they were in goals.
So he was just in front of those two. So he was sort of in front of the D, we'll say, protecting the 2-man full back line.
Exactly. Say if you imagine it like, say, McInerney and Morrissey are the base, and then he's the tip in that point, and they're kind of a triangle there. They kind of make that relay. In front of them, then there's the regular kind of traditional enough half back line. It's just a trio. It's Hart, Shane Cooney, and Fintan Burks for the last couple of games. And then in midfield again, it was unusual to see. It's kind of a 3-man midfield. Tui was named a wing forward, but he was kind of done most of his work around centre field. So you've kind of Padraic and Cathal Mannion deeper, and then again, once again, this triangle with Tui kind of just sitting ahead of them at the tip again. And then you have a two-man kind of half-forward line, which the last day was Conor Cooney and Niall Burke. And inside then you have Concannon, kind of similar enough to where Loftus sits on the other end of the field as the tip. And then further on, there was Flynn and Whelan. Now, in terms of Galway attack, you kind of see Whelan, Flynn, Cooney, Burke kind of interchange. So maybe one might come in and do a shift. O'Neill, what I've kind of discovered, he wants his wing half-forward line to work very hard. You could see them all over the field. I think at one point against Cork, Conor Cooney caught a long-range free. He was back near, close enough to his half-back line, if not full-back line. And so when you come out from inside, he wants you to bring what looks like to bring a real shift to things. And it's kind of a lot of hard work. So that when you're in, then you kind of get your breather, or you might maybe regret. And also it kind of keeps the opposition guessing in terms of like who's going to come in on top of me next. Now, this, like say, Jason Flynn's a bit different to Conor Cooney, or Whelan's going to be offer you something different to Brian Concannon even. It's going to be kind of just mixing it up really, and kind of a bit of a dynamicism to the attack really overall.
Yeah, because I was looking at that goal that Jason Flynn scored against Cork, and I did a couple of images which I sent on to you, and I'm going to put them up screen here, and I'll talk over them, and then I'll bring you in on it. So the first one here is how the ball was worked out from the back line. So I'm pretty sure that's Padraic Mannion. He threw it out to Cathal Mannion, solos up the wing, and like he's able to sprint one way and then hit an 80-yard ball in the other direction. Such are kind of like the great risks he had, or continues to have. Then the next one, you can see the ball coming in. If I just go back to that previous one, you'll see that Conor Whelan's at the bottom of the screen. He's moved out. This is this interchange and you're talking about. And I think it caught Cork off guard a small bit. So Conor Cooney wins the ball. He hands it on to Brian Cannon, who actually turns and goes straight at goal. So just you have that up there again. He runs straight at goal, and then basically this Cork team has been moved around and they've all been dragged towards the ball because Concannon went straight at goal, and you end up with Jason Flynn with the easy finish there. So the main point, as far as I see it, is that they're moving things around and they're using the space very, very well, and like that's a bit of variety that I haven't really seen in Galway in the past couple of years.
Absolutely. And even if you look at from the video there, if you look at Flynn's starting position for the goal, or when Mannion is striking the ball, he's 50-60 yards from goal, and the closest man to him is Owen Cadigan. And Cadigan has been dragged out the field, and Coleman obviously gave the shout that he would hold the fort back there. He was kind of sweeping all day. So Flynn, Cadigan, once Mannion hits him the ball, Cadigan kind of leaves Flynn, and Flynn kind of goes in kind of through the back there, and nobody seems to be picking him up at all. As far as I know, it's one of the midfielders that are closest to him at the end. Cadigan really switches off, and I think it's very poor on his behalf. Concannon flicks the ball to Flynn's and acres of space, and any top inter-county forward should be really finishing that. But as you were saying, like Whelan's position there at the first image, that's exactly what I'm talking about, because for the majority of the game, that would have been Conor Cooney, or even Jason Flynn had a stint out there. And we'll see even Loftus is in that image as well. He's in between Cathal Mannion and Whelan as well. That's how far out he was pushed, as I think he came out to win a ball at that point, and it kind of broke, and eventually Padraic Mannion ended up winning it. But that's kind of what the kind of the breakdown of it really from there. The diagonal ball I thought was fantastic by Mannion. You mentioned his wrists as well, and even something from Conor Cooley winning primary possession like that. Something we need to see more of from him if Galway are really going to have a chance, because he's all the talent in the world, but it's just things need to click for him occasionally. I'm very impressed with Concannon as well. He's off the ball movement, and even again for both goals he stepped inside. I think it was his, I'm not sure who he stepped inside there. I can't really make it out from the image because it's just on my phone. But it's a lovely kind of change of direction, and it just opened up the whole play. And as you said, Cork have been, the movement in general kind of dragged Cork all over the place, really. And in the end, Flynn goes in for it. Would have been a very easy finish, and Cork would have been disappointed. I'm sure Kieran Kingston would during the week as well, that it was so easy and he was left in so much space.
Do you would you take it as a big kind of a big boost that they did this without having Joe Canning involved?
Yeah, it's sure. Anytime you're without a player like Canning, and particularly in Galway, he's so important to the play. It was good to see a few other players stepping up, like again your Kincannons, and good to see Flynn and Cooney showing a bit of form, because they were nowhere near their best against Waterford the week before. I know it's probably Conor Cooney's only real second full game back after his pursuits with Thomas's, and Flynn is a player. They're two confidence players really, and when they're on song, they're really on song, but they can have difficult afternoons as well if things aren't going their way. They're always kind of, you feel, if they get a point early and settle in, they can be a real handful for any defenders. One aspect in Canning's loss would have been free taking. It was a real issue. I think out of the 16 wide, six were from frees, and very scoreable frees as well. Conor Cooney had a few attempts. He was from closer, and Conor doesn't even take the frees for the club, as we know, and it's a big call bringing him in and putting him on the frees. And Cathal Mannion didn't seem to be entrusted with the ones further out. And later on, they sent on Evan Nyland. He's kind of a specialist free taker, what we kind of regard in Galway. And he'd be a lot more assured under frees, and he'd have kind of been through it all. The frees would be a worry. That'd be one of the bigger things without Canning. Like, Canning's a 90% free taker, whereas I'd imagine Cathal Mannion are probably, even Conor Cooney, 75, 70, 80% along there. And if you were to win these close games, you know what I mean, you lead your free taker, everything going over the bar, basically. You can't afford to be missing what you are. Like, even the last day against Waterford, again, what was it, 18 wides, 16 against Cork. Like, that's without Canning, and that's without his free taking. That would be a worry. But as you said, it is good to see, like, they're showing great form from general play. But again, frees are so important in hurling now. You need to be nailing 90% really.
Do you kind of see a situation whereby Johnny Glynn will come back in the summer again? Like, he's involved in the backroom team of the New York footballers, and he's obviously based over there. And I've heard that Joseph Cooney in Australia, that he won't be back again and drafted back in again. Like, he's such an excellent player when he is involved in there and there regularly. Like, you know, look back to the 2017 season, for example.
Yeah, on probability and just kind of what you're hearing around, I'd say Johnny Glynn would probably be the more likely. It would be the more likely of the two, all right. But no confirms. And when we asked O'Neill, they said they hadn't spoke. I spoke to him before what game did we speak to him beforehand? Spoke to him, was it before the Limerick game? And he said they hadn't been in contact lately, that he had been in contact with Joseph Cooney, and he was still in Australia, and they were going to keep the channels open, but he would neither confirm or deny either were going to come back. I suppose the only thing with Johnny Glynn is maybe he's with the New York footballers, and he's probably keeping reasonably fit with them if he's doing a bit of training as well. And he's a fella that always, his condition is pretty good. He's kind of come back, and his touch might take a while to come back into, but physically he'd be all right. But you'd wonder whether Glynn would actually fit into the way O'Neill seems to be playing. It seems to be very short passing, and like, do we go back then straight away and just bombing balls in on top of Johnny Glynn in a full forward? Is that the answer then, or do you kind of move away from it, or is he just an option then from puck outs? Even puck outs are really the majority of them are going short. I'd say imagine 80% of them are going short. With Murphy, they're very rarely making even the half forward line. They're Wonder O'Neill. So I don't know where Johnny Glynn does fit in. Like, he's obviously a huge asset and a massive player to be able to on any squad to be able to bring in. Like, his presence alone strikes fear to defenders, but whether he fits in under O'Neill is another thing. I don't know. The channels of communication are obviously still open, but it's all hearsay at the moment, really. We're nothing really confirmed, unless now something happens ahead of championship or that. But Glenn has a job in New York, and as far as I know, his employer is very understanding, and he trying to get back and over. And it's very difficult in this modern age. You really need to be on top of it 100%.
Then just moving on to the Galway Tipperary rivalry, because there's been so many brilliant games over the years, and especially those ones in 15, 16, 70, all decided by a point in All Ireland semi-finals. But if I was to just jump back a little bit further, when John McIntyre, Tipperary man, was over Galway in 2010, that unbelievable All Ireland quarter final at Croke Park, it ended up 3-17 Tip, 3-16 Galway. Galway been ahead. Tip got something like maybe 3 late points to steal it. But there's a great quote from John McIntyre, and he goes, "There's a very thin line between winning and losing, and there is often then a presumption that on the losing team, either the management team or the players were off the pace. But Tip got the breaks in the final minutes," and then he just goes, "This is tough." So, he kind of just lost his train of thought even. And actually, Dermot O'Flynn was writing a piece in the Examiner at the time, and he just finished up with another tip sub. Pa Burke produced a defence-splitting run before parting to Lara Corbett, who turned, paused and drained the winner. Hero, heartbreaker, whatever your stance, it was a privilege to witness. That was a brilliant winner from Lara Corbett, who was wheeling around and knocked it
over. I remember it well. He wheeled out and just popped it over. John will always tell you all right about that unfortunateness and how things were tough for him in Galway. I'm sure you sat beside him in the press box. But it was heartbreaking because it just goes to show the small margins. And Tip ended up stopping Kilkenny that year in the famous 5 in a row drive. And as you know,
I remember it well.
It's just but there was a key point there, I think. Was it with 3 minutes to go? Ollie Canning went off, injured. Would I be right in saying that? He was having a serious battle with Noel McGrath all that day, because Tip's inside line would have been, would I be right in saying it would be Noel McGrath, Owen Kelly and Lara Corbett, or either side. Corbett would have been full forward, obviously. But Corbett's score was unbelievable. It kind of seemed to be, from my memory of it, it seemed to keep turning, constantly switching who was on top. It was in Galway, Tip go 3 up, Galway suddenly go 3 up, Tip come back 3 up, and then Galway. And I genuinely watching on, I thought Galway were going to do it, but 6 goals, what a game. You'd some unbelievable battles, like Cornan Canning that day, full back, I thought he was outstanding. Canning was one of his quieter games. Mickey Cahalon, Damien Hayes, your own brother O'Neill Latanian, these unbelievable battles. David Burke on Brendan Maher. There's a couple of real unsung heroes. I think it was Garrod Ryan was a real unsung hero. I think he scored 3 points that day. And even someone like Éanna Ryan from Galway, Clymer Daly, we kind of didn't hear a lot about him afterwards. He scored 2 points that day. Kevin Hines came on as a sub. Another one who kind of, when games seemed to be going away from him, he came on wing forward, and I think he might have scored a couple as well. If Tip lost, would Sheedy have been under pressure at that point? It's hard to know. You see, this is it. Small margins. Instead, Tip go on, they claim the All Ireland title, get one up on the old rivals, and I think eventually handed out Kilkenny their first defeat in 22 championship games. It's incredible. It's just to show small margins, really, isn't it? Just smallest margins. But it seems to be the way in Galway. Tip clashes the whole way along. Even the last even looking at it since 2013, I think they've met 7 times in championship. We've just gone through there. Only the game in 2014 where Galway were leading by 6 points with 20 minutes to go. I'll always remember it. And Tip came back, and I think they ended up winning by 9. What a collapse from a Galway point of view. But I think the only occasion from the other 6 games that there was only one other occasion where it was more than 2 points, and I think on 5 other occasions only a point separated them. It just goes to show how little there was anytime these two teams play each other, and just we're always in for an unbelievable game between Tip and Galway. It's just the rivalry is there, and that whole North Tip against East Galway, and there's a bit of hatred, we'll say, might be a strong word, but even my own grandfather would have said, when we were younger growing up, anyone but feckin' Tip, he didn't care as long as we bet Tip or Tip didn't win, but I'd be clear now from where I would have been growing up, but still, you never like to see Tip winning as a supporter. But at the end of the day, they're 2 unbelievable hurling county, and it's nothing but respect there either, for all they've achieved.
And they're stressful games to watch too. Other than that 2010 game and maybe 2014, like you said, a collapse, whereas on the flip side, I'd be saying Tip got it right and turned it around and turned it on. But is there any other game that would stand out for you, particularly that they've had in recent years?
Recent years, maybe even go back to 2005. I don't know if you remember. It would have been, what was it? Tip started very well, and I think it was Micheál Webster was absolutely causing Shane Kavanagh at full back real problems. I think he won a close range free that Owen Kelly had saved. Then he set up Tommy Dunn's goal. I think he was dragged down for a penalty, but Owen Kelly made no mistake. It looked like Tipper on the up. Tip seemed at the time to be a much more physical, bigger team. Even like they sent on like John Carroll and Redzer O'Grady and these guys in Galway were renowned then of these smaller, riskier hurlers, say. But they always felt like teams would bully them, and that's kind of the narrative going around then, I felt. It's kind of changed a small bit, but David Ford was playing that day at centre forward, who'd be a selector now with Galway, and I think he got a vital goal. And I always remember probably the most telling image from that game would be Damien Hayes' goal, where the ball was let in and kind of caught, and he just kind of shoved or whatever. He put Hugh Maloney back in his backside before unleashing a rocket, and that kind of really told the tale. But that would be a game I'd really remember from my youth now. It'd be rather even than the trilogy. Richie Murray would have been clubman of mine, obviously from home. Had an unbelievable game that day. I think he got to finish with 3 points, but again, small margins. Like I think it was I finished a point in it, and Galway didn't go into on and bet Kilkenny and comprehensively bet Kilkenny, and then like they would have had to beat the big three to win the All Ireland in Cork, but again they fell short. It seemed to be youth following Galway hurling. This was the way it was. We just constantly coming up short. There was always someone better than you, no matter what semi-final you won. But just again, I think like Ollie Canning again was on Owen Kelly that day in 2005, and I think he gave an exhibition of defending. Really, I think Kelly's quite one of his quieter games. Like trying to think, but yeah, that would be one for me. And sure, obviously, if we go to the trilogy, then like just. But even from the trilogy, I know it was the 1 point hits or the 1 point games, but there was kind of huge hits in a couple of those games, like say Paddy Maher laying down the marker on Canning, and then Inara re-emerging. But oddly enough, that would have been in 2016. That would have been one of the happier days. It would have been coming out of Croke Park after a Galway loss, even if it was to Tip. I always felt like that day Canning went off at half time. Adrian Toohey also went off at half time. He was hurling well at wing back, I think. So like it just would have been came out, and it was like Jesus. This was a game that we, things went against us, and they didn't lay it down. And then 2017, I think, like Maher got he felt a bit of retribution from Gareth McInerney. He put him back in his backside, and just those hits kind of seemed to lay it down on a marker. And I know a small margin. I thought we were a lot better than Tip in 2017. I thought 1 point might have been, a bit generous to Tip. I think that they could have been out of sight really, and. It was just, but never forget it. Like that Canning point, it would be. How could you? No more than Maloney the year before. Just from a Galway's perspective, it's just one of those moments. And that point, once that point went over, I know with Waterford in the final, it just felt like that's it. It has to be. Surely this time it's going to be the end of the way.
Yeah, it kind of had to be. Can we talk about the Galway football team this year? You must be like. And I said this a few times, so I'm glad I can ask a Galway man who's been following the team this. Have you ever seen a team flick a switch so quickly overnight? Like it's pretty much the same group of players, and they went from playing dour drab stuff to losing football also to all of a sudden brilliant football that's winning.
Yeah, it's the PJ factors that I like to refer to it in North Galway where I'm working. He's just. I thought he'd come in and it'd be an entertaining kind of journey and stuff like that, but I didn't realise it would be. I realised it's the league and everything like that. They're probably maybe a level ahead in terms of fitness at the moment than a lot of teams, which is kind of a point that's been overlooked. And come championship, a lot of teams may be a bit closer to them, but it's been an absolute breath of fresh air. There's no point in suggesting otherwise. I think the whole Galway public is bought in behind them, and he's just even the way his positivity is speaking. I think he gave an interview after the Meath game the last day and was encouraging no back passing or just, look up, you get the ball, you look up, you look forward, kick quickly into someone like, say, Adrian Varley. He wins possession, lays it to a couple of runners coming off, straight away over the bar. It sounds so easy, but so many teams are so unwilling to do it. And it's so confusing. Like when you just watch, it's an unbelievable template. If you have good attackers, and Galway have like a breadth of good attackers. You have Walsh, Comer, Farley, Conroy, Brannigan, like someone like Eamon Brannigan who seems to have found a new lease of life. Michael Daly, Martin Farrer, Ian Burke, like those players, you'd be crazy not to kind of implement a style like this, really, wouldn't you? It's even at the other end, then they've like a really solid back line. You've John Daly, centre back, who's been kind of a revelation this year, one of Galway's outstanding players. Liam Silk has come back now, and we all know what Liam Silk can offer, in terms of attack and defence, and I'm sure he'll get. And then Gary O'Donnell seems to have just reinvigorated his form, just has gone through the roof, and he seems to be just playing with, like say, someone like Eamon Brennigan, a new lease of life. Conor Gleeson has locked down the goalkeeper spot, really good shot stopper, but played for soccer with Galway United. And even his restarts and everything have been excellent. It's probably the only worry might be the full back line, where things kind of can look a bit open at times, and like Sean Kelly and Johnny Heaney are they'd be more notable for going forward than. Well, Sean Kelly might maybe not so, but they're well capable of going forward. I think they've got goal. They've both been on the goal trail this year. And Mulcairn is still learning his trade. He's obviously a young fella at full back, but midfield would probably be another one. But with injuries to, like, say, Kieran Duggan and Peter Cook being away, but all in all, it's been, as you said, it's been just real positivity around it. Like all around Galway, they're on about Padraic Joyce, and his word is held on like it's gospel, and particularly like anything he says just seems to travel, and it's like it's unbelievable. I don't recall anything like this ever with a manager coming in and just such positivity straight away and everything like that.
And like even a player like Paul Conroy, who would have been criticised a lot for his performances in the last few years, I had a comment on the channel there, someone just going on about how his performances are night and day. Can you talk about what his performances have been like?
Yeah, well, Conroy's he always would have been a real leader. I think sometimes he'd be harshly criticised because when Conroy was coming through, he would be like the talent really wasn't there. Like even speaking ahead of Mayo, like even in 2013, maybe 6 years ago, like what was it, 17-point hammer in Pearse Stadium, and I think there's very few players still left from that. Maybe even on the squad, I think you might have Johnny Doohan, Bradshaw, Conroy, Fintan O'Curry, and Flynn. They'd be the only ones left from that starting team. But like he was unbelievably. From what I've heard, now I wasn't at the game because I was in Pearse Stadium, but just listening on the radio, he was Galway Bay FM man of the match, and just the reports from him, he seemed to turn the tide. He came on and he won 2 frees, and I think he was at 4 points he kicked as well from play. Just like that contribution is just outstanding. And another player again that seems to be really happy under Padraic Joyce and seems to be thriving.
And like the way that Shane Walsh has been used, been moved inside, and I know he can change his position as well. I mean, night and day for him. Even just, I suppose it was unfortunate for Kevin Walsh that he didn't really have Damien Comer last year. He came back at the very end, but obviously that's very late. He'd missed most of the season. What about their change this year? What like have they spoken about the change in those players? Has PJ said it? Has Shane Walsh spoken to the media?
Yeah, well, as you know, Shane Walsh is made captain, so that was kind of something Padraic Joyce said, that he wanted to make him realise that he wants to up it another few levels. He spoke positively, very encouragingly about Shane, but even he says that he feels he can go up another level, and it's about consistently doing it. Full forward seems to be really suiting Shane as well, as in he's just like he's so accurate in front of goal, off the left, off the right. But even last year under Kevin, and I know Kevin had a lot of injuries last year, he would have been working with the bare bones for a good part of the championship and the league as well. And he managed to keep their Division 1 status, which was seen as an achievement at the time. But I think they played, was it Sligo last year? And it was actually a game I was at myself, was covering it for the paper. And one point we looked out and Shane Walsh was back in his own full back line. He was one of the deepest players, and you're just kind of scratching your head. Like Shane Walsh is really a Rolls Royce kind of attacker. So what are you really getting from him back there? Surely, in terms of the Messi and Ronaldo, you could get a few other lads to do a bit more running, so that when he receives the ball, he can have the maximum effect on possession. And his pace is blistering. Like there's very few people that can live with him, even if he is soloing with the ball rather than running. Like he solos with the ball almost as quickly as he is without it, and just a gifted player and thriving under the captaincy, and just great to see. And it's like he's a really nice fella, Shane. If you're speaking to him, he's really down to earth. Like, but he did come under a bit of criticism, but in the past, like, and he was expected to carry away. But I think style of play mightn't have suited him, and now we're really seeing the best of him. Like that goal against Kerry was just top drawer, out of this world, and just overall he's been fantastic, really fantastic.
Do you think there's a possibility for him to get the same limelight and sort of hero status in football as Joe Canning gets in hurling? Because they're both obviously supremely talented, and
Yeah.
I suppose your fortunes are sort of linked forever to how the team does.
Yeah, perhaps there's probably a bit of a link there, all right. It's hard though. Would you compare him to Kenning talent wise? Like it's very very difficult to compare them. I just don't know. Kenning was kind of seen as this project. Shane Walsh was a project, but Kenning was probably known outside the county even before it got minor. Remember, we just hearing about this fella. Like, just I think I seen him. He's playing under 16 game. I think it was the day after my debut or something like that, and he was taking a free, and I think it was 21 yards, and it would have been one of the smaller balls that they would have played, the size fours. Nearly put it out through the back of the net, like, it just, even back then, you're just thinking, my God, this fella is just a freak, like. But see, being from South Galway as well, I wouldn't have grown up. We wouldn't have had as much coverage of the football. We wouldn't have followed as much either. But Shane Walsh was heard of during his days with Jarrett's and all that. But probably outside that, I don't know. Like, football is probably a bit more stacked in terms of talent at the moment. Like, I think maybe like there's a lot of really top tier players out there in various positions, and your role is very different as well. But the two you wouldn't very difficult to compare really. I don't know if Shane could, if he could reach those elevate to that level that Kenning's at, it'd be incredible. But I just don't know. Like, Kenning was 19, 18, 19, he was destroying senior hurlers. Like, it's just once in a lifetime probably for us in Galway to see someone like that.
Yeah, Ash, please God, you don't get too many more talents like that. Can you tell me about this Galway Mayo rivalry, or how you've kind of experienced it over the years? Because that's the next team up, and a chance to consign more or less Mayo to relegation, and I'm sure you'd enjoy that.
Well, that's a big one for Galway supporters, particularly in North and West Galway as well. They'd love nothing more than when you're on the troth now with Mayo to kind of to finish the job, as they say. But it's like Mayo. It's unbelievable rivalry. Like, I don't think there's any rivalry out there like it in any of the codes across hurling or football. Like, they're so evenly poised in terms of championship matches. I think it currently stands at, like, I think it's Galway 41 wins, Mayo 42 after beating them last year in Limerick, and just 6 draws. As I said, either team would take great delight in knocking the other one down a pedestal or two. Mayo kind of probably seen as probably in Galway a bit of the media darlings over the last few years. Like, it's, and maybe now Mayo are seeing that Galway are very popular now in the media under Joyce, and they'd like nothing more than maybe to knock that. It's kind of, we've seen kind of a power shift over the years with Galway and Mayo. Though, like, say in the late 90s and early 90s was Galway, then around the mid 90s it's probably swung back towards Mayo. Then the late noughties as well, back towards Galway. Then early 2010s it was all Mayo really. Like, so I think I touched on it, the 2013 game at Pearse Stadium. Galway, Alan Mulholland. It was just one of the darkest days. Even though it was lovely sunshine, I think the sun was splitting the rocks. It was 17-point win, and just felt like this is just misery. Like, really was in. But over the last few years, Galway seemed to kind of got on top of them. I think dating back, it was something like Galway before last year's loss. I think the last 8 games in all competitions, Galway had beaten them. Mayo always have a sting though, like against Galway in particular. And the further you go on, it's probably the worst time to play them, because just their experience is something else. And it's just you never enjoy playing Mayo, because it's similar to with Tape like or something like that. There's just too much riding on the line, and it's just you want to win no matter what, and it just doesn't matter how crap the game might be, or just how lacking in quality it is. It's just, if you can get over the line, happy days, and you can saw it into them for the next few months, like, say. And sending Mayo down would be massive for Galway. It'd be just it would be real kind of first step in Padraic Joyce's bout for Connacht this year, and it would really put a bit of seed of doubt, and maybe Mayo as well. But you don't know. Like, Mayo are going to come full guns blazing at the week, or Sunday week, should I say? I'd imagine that they'll really, really put it up to Galway, and Galway certainly won't get it their own way.
What I like is that rather than sort of saying there's a great rivalry and blah blah blah, you've actually sold it into him, and I commend you for it, because too many people.
I'm too long working in North Galway, Shane. I'm sure, you'd have nothing but respect for Mayo as well for what they've achieved. You'd like to remind them not getting over the line. Like, it's like they're still like they were the only team that put it up to an incredible Dublin team. Without them, the championship would have been a dull affair over the last years. They'd probably been calling for Dublin to be split into 22 rather than 4. Without them, like, it's just. Other than that, yeah. But as I said, working in North Galway, you just hear, there's great banter around too. Like, in terms of like either Mayo friends you text after a game, or yes, you just and they'd saw it back into you, so you're left with no choice either. Like, so it's like that, really.
So obviously winning against Mayo would mean a league final, and then at the moment it's out of Dublin's hands whether they get to a final or not. So a league title is there. Obviously we've seen Connacht titles been won in recent years, and Padraic Joyce has talked up the idea of winning all the titles, including the All-Ireland, in the first year. Why not? Which I think we all love hearing that.
Yeah.
Do you think these titles are all realistic? I mean, certainly the league title feels that way.
Well, the league title has to be realistic at this point where you're standing in the group. A draw in your last two, and either against Mayo or Dublin, I think guarantees the league final. I could be wrong in saying that, but the league is definitely realistic. I can't see how it's not. Like, if you're coming up against someone like Kerry in Croke Park, there's absolutely. I wouldn't imagine they'd be like Kerry are an unbelievable team, but Galway would relish the opportunity to take them on at present. And they went down to Kerry in the heartlands. Was it Killarney or Tralee? I can't remember which the venue was, but and ran them close. And a lot of people who were down it said Galway were unlucky not to actually come away with a win from it. As for that, Connacht is obviously realistic. It should be the minimum achievement every year for Galway looking towards winning Connacht, especially with the talent they have. All Ireland, I'm not so sure. I think I touched on it earlier on. I think Galway physically are maybe a level above, maybe like Dublin, or clearly nowhere near where they're going to be in championship. Kerry obviously can push it another level or two as well. Like, you wonder, are Kerry really pushing as hard as they can for the league? It's very difficult to know. I think making Super 8s and having a real cut at it, and maybe making an All-Ireland semi-final, and you never know, like, from there. But it'd be a brave man. I personally wouldn't be backing Galway for an All-Ireland in football, and I probably wouldn't in hurling either, being perfectly honest. But if I was to pick it, but it's, who knows? You never know in these things. Like, and you can always things can change in a whim, or an injury here or there for a key player. Things can fall asunder all of a sudden, or injury for a key player in another team. Same story scenario, really. You just don't know. But league definitely should be one they should be aiming to win for sure, and definitely Connacht title and a cut of the Super 8, a cut of the semi-final after Super 8s.
David Connors of the Tuam Herald, you've been very good with your time. Appreciate it.